I mean, if you really take Jesus at his word, he was a bit of a rabble rouser.
Absolutely, yeah.
He denounced the wealthy not for the abuse of their wealth, but for possessing it in the first place. He promised them that their very status, the very condition of being wealthy, would lead to suffering in the world to come for them, just as poverty would lead to relief in the world to come for the destitute. He, said his disciples couldn't be his disciples if they believed in private property. All sorts of things he said that, if you really take them literally, would make life rather difficult for us. Luckily, we have the doctrine of grace abounding, which means principally that Jesus didn't really mean anything he said, because that would violate divine grace. And really, the reason that his palms were filled with blood was so that we could fill ours with gold.
Right.
Look, I mean, if you actually retreat to the Greek of the Sermon on the Mount and a great deal of the synoptic teachings of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus in the synoptic gospels, rather, and place it in the context of his time, it's remarkable how much of it is simply practical advice for avoiding jail time and debt collection and being sold into slavery by unscrupulous men. I would say a vast portion of Jesus's gospel is practical advice to the poor and denunciation of the rich.
Yeah.
I mean, even the passages leading up to and encompassing the Lord's Prayer in Matthew concern how we're to deal with oponeros, the evil one. But it's not the devil he's talking about. It's certainly not evil in the abstract, in the way that annoying mistranslation of the Lord's Prayer persists.
Mm-hmm.
It means basically a wicked man. Don't resist evil. It's is the translation we have. It's don't try by force to stand up against the wicked man. He has all the power on his side. The courts, That's why when you're going to court, you're going to be sued by one of these rogues. Try to reach a rapprochement on the street before you go into the courts, because the courts are corrupt and they're on the side of the rich, and you're going to be despoiled one way or the other. And the Lord's Prayer itself, I mean, is the last half of it is prayer for enough bread, prayer for relief from debts, which every peasant in Galilee and Judea was suffering from. There was a debt crisis at the time. Credit law had been so twisted and distorted, and the courts were so corrupt that everyone was basically a debtor and a slave to his debt. Keep us away from trial, meaning quite literally the law courts, where not lead us not into temptation. It's spare us prosecution in civil court, which ends up getting us sent to jail and all of our possessions taken from us by our oppressor, and deliver us from this rogue, this evil man who wants to. Well, it's really it's remarkable how much of Jesus's preaching to the poor is just how to escape the worst consequences of your debt and the corruption of and the power of the rich and the courts.
Yeah, and as an ever-present threat, right? It's oponeros, not just poneros in the abstract, like not just some rogue, but the rogue, like this guy.
Not a rogue.
Right.
And certainly not poneri, certainly not evil in any abstract sense. But that the wicked man, the creditor, the man who's out to get everything you have. Who will make extravagant promises, who will swear upon Jerusalem, upon the throne of God. So yes, you're right. So I don't know how we got off on this tangent. Yes, the secret of Christian theology especially after the Edict of Milan, was basically how do we convince Jesus that what he really meant was that we have to have the right attitude about wealth.
Yeah.
I think that Christ was a political radical. I think that he meant what he said about wealth and poverty. I believe that he described in his actions and adumbrated in his words a way of living together in community that was not just moral, but that was a political order, and that it was adopted, according to the book of Acts, by the church in Jerusalem, and you know, I think the early church in general. We see evidence as late as reports about them, about Christians in the second and third centuries, and that was actually, you know, it's necessary to recover the political Jesus of Nazareth from the imperial Christ of Christendom, you know, whose empire subverted itself. It's going to look like left-wing politics, you know, of the most radical sort. I think that a truly Christian polity would look something like an anarcho-communist syndicalist arrangement, but you know, even then I'm pinning it down with terms appropriate to a different sphere of moral philosophy. In the short term, if you want to be a good Christian, you should be some kind of socialist. If you're not a socialist in your thinking, then you're not really thinking like a Christian. That is, if we can take Christ as being an authority on how Christians should think.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been really great. I really appreciate it. I hope that you had fun and that you might be interested.
Oh, yes. I like the absolute formlessness of the format. You know,